When we had reached the farther side, the emperor went on foot to the post house, while his carriage was being ferried over and disembarked. I never remember seeing the emperor so light-hearted. Setting foot once more on French soil made him forget all his weariness and perhaps even his misfortunes for a moment. When he reached the posting house, the postmaster recognized him. Marshal Valmy, for whom he sent and to whom he talked while the horses were being harnessed, could not believe his own eyes. We were on the road again before 7 o'clock. Fagalda, who had been sent by way of Gumbena and had rejoined us at Glogau, had acted as courier, together with Omodru, since we'd left Dresden. They continued their duties now that we were in France. Fresh dispatches from Paris led the conversation to the Malay affair and elicited from the emperor several observations that seemed to me worth recording. Observe, said the emperor, how the revolution and the confirmed habit of changing governments have destroyed all idea of order and stability. There is still much for me to do towards reestablishing the social order. When my death was announced, not one of those soldiers or officials gave a single thought to my son. The idea of the King of Rome did not even occur to Frochot. It seemed to him simpler to have a fresh revolution than to maintain the established order of things. But when I get to Paris, everyone will boast of his own devotion to me, and Frochot with the rest of them, if I admit him to my presence. An example must be made, for fidelity is perhaps a more sacred duty in a magistrate than in a soldier, who has only to obey the orders he receives without questioning them. Errors committed by magistrates are serious matters, for they are expected to set an example. How blind men are, even when their own interests are concerned. France needs me for another 10 years. If I were to die there, would be general chaos. Every throne would collapse if my sons collapsed, for I perceive that all I have done still is very unstable. Our institutions and organizations are not completed, I said. All the powerful interests in the country must be enlisted for the preservation of the existing. You need a peerage, the emperor interrupted briskly, an aristocracy adapted to the time we live in. But with the fickleness of this nation and the pretensions of the generals, it will be a good 10 years before those new institutions will exercise sufficient influence. If there were more talent among the army commanders, they would be like Caesar's lieutenants and divide the world amongst themselves. But none has the genius necessary to accomplish a revolution so great as this, though it might save you in the event of my dying. If I were to die, the danger would lie in the weakness of the regency and the intrigues of the generals who want all the interest, all the places, and especially all the money. You would not pull through, particularly if you failed to take immediate steps to decrease the numbers of the guard. Observe that I, myself, have not put all arms of that service under the same commander. A very firm will is needed to keep the guard in hand. Malay is a lunatic. He must be. If he believed he could overturn a government just by suspending the activities of the police and hoodwinking some senior officers and a prefect for a matter of 3 hours, when there was an army of 200,000 men abroad and he had not one accomplice in high office nor in the provinces. He is a man who wanted to get himself shot by getting himself talked about, but his action has proved conclusively what I had partly suspected, that no great faith can be put in mankind. The men of the old regime were truly unruly and factious. They rose in revolt when they dared, but they would not permit an underling to rebel, and they were faithful to their oath. The notions of monarchy and hereditary titles, the desire to preserve the existing order of things, these belong to a new language which is to be learned by the rising generation, but they will never be in the dictionary of the men of today. They have already forgotten the misfortunes of the revolution. Clark boasts of his devotion, of what he did and the orders he gave, possibly after the event, but he did not even put on his boots to go to the nearest barracks and make sure of the troops. He saw Jacobin everywhere. And we will see who is right, to ensure that the thing shall be unraveled. I have not even changed the Minister of Police, for he is more concerned than anyone else in repairing the harm brought about by his lack of foresight. Savary clings to his ministry and the salary. He is afraid of losing his post, although so far as that goes, he no longer needs it, as I have given him plenty of money. He has at least 5 or 6 millions. Whether As aide de camp or as cabinet minister, he was always asking me for money, and this displeased me. Not that he was alone in this, for never did Ney or Uno or many another open or finish a campaign without coming to me for cash. Savary had no fortune, he has children and an extravagant wife. I must, however, do him the justice to say that he serves me with zeal. He has a fine appearance, and this is essential in Paris. His squabbles with Marais weary me. He is always at odds with him. I do not like this bickering. They are jealous of each other. Savary thinks I prefer Marais to himself. Do you know who put them against one another? I do not know at all. Probably their wives. They would embroil empires. My other ministers never bother me on that score. They understand one another and do not weary me with their petty jealousies or dislikes. Sometimes I have wanted to get commissaires married, but when all is said and done, it would have been a nuisance. Women have pretensions, and the wives of functionaries have always been a nuisance at court. One does not know where to rank them, nor what precedence to give them, when there are foreign ladies present. Poor Savary is not treated well by the Paris correspondents. Everyone ridicules him. It is always a stroke of luck for many conspirators when a minister of police gets the worst of it, though another comes to take his place. Savary's fall appears certain, and it seems as if everyone wants to honor of dealing him the first blow. That is one reason, sire, why you should stand up for him and keep him, for, as you say, he will now do better than another. If there has been no conspiracy, if Mallet is the sole author of this folly, Savary is justified. You are right, but I can scarcely believe it is so. Savary is the dupe of some conspirators who have blinded his eyes, or this would have slipped out to Pasquier, who is a good observer. We shall know all about it. Tell me, in how many hours? In 44 hours, sire. I say in 36. Upon this, the emperor made me relight the candle, and he set to work reckoning alternatively by the map and road book how many hours it would take us. After disputing about minutes, as if it lay in my power to prolong our journey, he then spoke of his anticipated joy at seeing the empress and his son, and then began to tease in my ear and joke about the 8 hours that he was obliged to add to his calculations, which he spent a couple of hours in going over again. Each stage, each quarter of a stage, each quarter of an hour, each minute was reckoned up. Our inevitable halts, our moments of rest, all were curtailed. The difficulties and delays of the road were whittled down to a minimum. The emperor forgot Mallet, the police, all his troubles. By daylight, his expression showed me that he was already dreaming of the Tuileries, where I was as anxious to see him safely installed as he was to be there. He seemed so confident and happy that for me also, this was one of the pleasantest moments of our journey. The following day, the emperor supped at Verdun, December 17th. Having resumed a wheeled carriage at Erfurt, we had stopped twice a day to grease the axles, and we took advantage of this forced delay to eat. After leaving Dresden, the emperor spoke of nothing but Paris, and of the empress's surprise at seeing him, of how everyone would be astonished. From Frankfurt onward, he calculated the hour of his arrival in Paris, and at each stage confirmed his certainty of reaching there before midnight, if nothing delayed us. The more frequently he met the couriers, the more avid he was for details. He was more satisfied than he had expected to be with the attitude of public opinion and with its reception of the news of our retreat from Moscow, coupled with the interruption of all communications. But he was much concerned with the effect the bulletin would have caused, and was surprised at getting no news of it, especially as Monsieur Montesquieu, who preceded his messenger, had rejoined us. Judging by private correspondence, every family was too occupied with its own sake in Russia to pay great attention to public affairs. It was not thought that there could have been a battle. The Russians were supposed to be in no condition to fight. This opinion made any disquietude less lively. Our disasters were entirely ignored. As we subsequently learned, it had not been possible to publish the famous bulletin, which depicted them so tragically until the 16th, 2 days later than the emperor thought.